Welcome back to Mystery Case X. Today we're continuing our journey into real criminal cases from around the world. This is a clan massacre by its more chilling name, the 8 Immortals restaurant murders. If you were born in the mid-1980s or earlier, chances are you've already heard of this case. You might have even seen the infamous Hong Kong horror film it inspired, The Untold Story. And if you have, you already know. This wasn't your average slasher flick. This was the kind of film that gets under your skin and stays there no matter how mentally prepared you thought you were going in. The film's lead actor, Anthony Wong, took home Best Actor for his portrayal of a cold-blooded killer, a historic first in Hong Kong cinema. A prestigious acting award going to the lead of a Category 3 horror film. Never happened before. Never happened since. But here's what makes this whole thing truly disturbing: every gruesome detail in that film based on a real case. A real massacre. The 8 Immortals restaurant killings, a series of murders that shook all of Asia in 1985. The murders took place at a small restaurant in Hong Kong called the 8 Immortals. 10 people were killed. 9 of them were members of the same family as the owners. The 10th was the restaurant's cook. Not a single survivor. When the case came to light, Hong Kong was shaken to its core. Because the truth wasn't just that someone had committed murder. It was what allegedly came after. Rumors spread fast that the killer had used the victims' remains as filling in the restaurant's steamed buns and continued serving them to customers. It was the kind of story people refused to believe, because believing it meant accepting that a person could do something like that. It all began in August 1985, when Macau police received a tip from beachgoers at Hacksaw Beach, Black Sand Beach on the southern coast of Macau. They had found something in the water. 8 dismembered human limbs floating on the surface. Officers arrived at the scene and began collecting the remains for forensic examination. What the medical examiners found made the case significantly more disturbing. Among the 8 limbs recovered, there were 4 right legs. 4 from 4 different bodies, which meant they were looking at a minimum of 4 victims. But the Macau police investigation at the time was, to put it plainly, lacking. Authorities quickly settled on a convenient explanation. These were likely illegal immigrants who had attempted to cross by sea. Their boat had capsized and sharks had done the rest. Case tentatively closed. It wouldn't stay closed for long. Reports kept coming in. More body parts washing ashore at different locations across the coast. The pattern was impossible to ignore. Macau authorities, now recognizing the severity of what they were dealing with, brought in prominent forensic experts from mainland China to assist. Even so, the investigation stalled. For months, they had nothing. 8 months passed with no breakthrough. Then, in April 1986, both the Macau Police Headquarters and the Guangzhou Criminal Investigation Department received an unusual letter. The sender identified himself as the younger brother of a man named Cheng Lin, the owner of the 8 Immortals restaurant. In the letter, he explained that he had lost all contact with his brother's family, Jing Lin, his wife, and their children for the past 8 months. Then he started seeing the news reports. Body parts washing up on the shores of Macau. And something told him it wasn't a coincidence. He begged the police to investigate. The brother also provided a detailed list of everyone who had been living at the 8 Immortals restaurant at the time of their disappearance. Jinglin, the owner, 50 years old. His wife, Qin Huiyi, 42. Together, they had 5 children, 4 daughters and 1 son, the youngest just 7 years old. Also living with them was Jinglien's elderly mother, 70 years old. In addition, Jinglien had a relative the family called Ninth Aunt, a woman named Qin Lijin. She didn't live at the restaurant, but ran a small stall in the nearby area. Then the brother offered something else, a lead. He described Jinglien as a hard-working man, someone who poured everything into keeping the restaurant running. His wife, Qin Huiyi, was the opposite. She was a compulsive gambler obsessed with mahjong. The brother suspected the family's sudden disappearance might have something to do with her gambling debts. He went on to describe the moment everything clicked. He had gone to the Immortals restaurant looking for his brother's family and found a stranger walking out. The man introduced himself as someone with the surname Huang. He claimed he had taken over the restaurant and said he had no idea where the Jing family had gone. The brother had a theory. He suspected his sister-in-law and this man had been involved in an affair, and that together they had murdered the entire family to take the restaurant for themselves. Police reopened the case immediately, and this time forensic re-examination turned up something that had been missed before: a fingerprint recovered from a fragment of human skin found at sea. It was a match. A confirmed match to Qin Lijin Jinglien's relative Ninth Aunt, who had vanished at the same time as the rest of the family. Quietly, investigators turned their attention to the new owner of the 8 Immortals restaurant. His name was Huang Jiheng. Detectives fanned out across the neighborhood, canvassing dozens of residents near the 8 Immortals restaurant. 2 witnesses stood out. The first was a poultry supplier who had regularly delivered to Zheng Lin's restaurant. He told investigators that on August 4th, 1985, Jing Lin had called him to place an order same as always and arranged for delivery the following morning. But when the supplier arrived on August 5th, the restaurant was shut. A sign on the door read, "Closed for 3 days." Strange. The man had just placed an order the day before with no mention of closing. The supplier knocked anyway. A man named Huang came to the door. "The whole family went on a trip," he said. "I've bought the restaurant. We're doing renovations right now. Don't need any stock yet. Come back another time." The supplier had no choice but to load his delivery back up and leave. Something felt off. But what could he do? The second witness lived near Qin Lijin's market stall. They told police that on August 4th, a man roughly 30 years old had come looking for her. He told her that Jing Lin's youngest son was running a high fever and that the family needed her help. Qin Lijin closed up her stall and followed the man toward the 8 Immortals restaurant. Nobody ever saw her come back. With these 2 testimonies, investigators were able to establish a timeline. The murders had taken place between August 4th and 5th, 1985. But there was a problem, and it was a significant one. Huang Jiheng was 50 years old. The man witnesses described luring Qin Lijin away was around 30. That meant one thing: Huang likely hadn't acted alone. Then, on September 28, 1986, Huang made a move that gave him away entirely. He packed up his belongings, gathered his family, and attempted to flee Macau for mainland China. He didn't make it far. Police had been watching. Officers intercepted him at the border crossing and brought him in. In the interrogation room, Huang was remarkably calm. He denied he was running, said he was simply moving his family back to his hometown. As for the restaurant, he'd bought it legitimately. He claimed paid for it with his own money. And where did that money come from? Years of smuggling, he said, without missing a beat. But under sustained questioning, Huang's story started to crack. The contradictions piled up. He changed his account, admitted he hadn't bought the restaurant with saved cash after all. He'd won it. Gambling, he said. He and the Zheng family had been playing together one night and he had walked away with winnings of 180,000 yen, an enormous sum at the time. The Zheng family couldn't pay, so they made a deal. Jinglin had 1 year to repay the full amount. If he couldn't, the 8 Immortals restaurant would be signed over as settlement. The deadline came. Jinglin had nothing, so he handed over the restaurant. It was a clean story, almost too clean. While Huang was being questioned, a separate team was tearing apart the 8 Immortals restaurant, and inside they found a large safe carefully hidden. They opened it. Inside, untouched, were Zheng Lin's personal identification documents and the birth certificates of all 5 of his children. If the entire family had simply moved away, if they had gone on a trip as Huang had casually claimed, why would they leave behind the most essential documents of their lives? Huang Zhiheng refused to confess to the murders, but the evidence recovered from the restaurant was enough. Police formally charged him with murder and robbery, and he was remanded into custody to await trial. He didn't last a day. On his very first night in the cell block, other inmates beat him so severely he had to be rushed to the hospital. Nobody explained why. Nobody needed to. At the hospital, Huang begged the doctors to let him stay. He knew what was waiting for him back inside, and he knew he wasn't walking away from a death sentence. But the law doesn't bend for killers. The moment he was stable enough to be moved, officers escorted him back through the hospital corridor toward the transport. He grabbed a metal trash can lid off the wall and slashed his own throat. Doctors and police managed to restrain him in time. He survived. And then came a revelation that stunned even the investigators. Huang Zhiheng wasn't his real name. The man in custody was actually Chen Ziliang, a fugitive wanted in Hong Kong since 1973, when he had committed a brutal arson, murder, and robbery. After the crime, he had cut off his own fingertips to destroy his prints, fled to Macau, and built an entirely new identity. He had been hiding in plain sight for over a decade. Faced with the evidence of his 1973 crimes, Huang finally admitted to that case. But he continued to deny any involvement in the murders of the 10 people at the 8 Immortals restaurant. The truth came out anyway through his own cellmates. In the long, dark nights of his cell under mounting psychological pressure, Huang had confided everything to a fellow inmate. Every detail. This is what he described. On the night of August the 4th, 1985, Huang went to the 8 Immortals restaurant to collect the 180,000 won gambling debt from Zheng Lin. Zheng Lin refused to pay. He pushed back. Words turned into a fight. In a moment of rage, Huang smashed a beer bottle and pressed the broken edge against the throat of Zheng Lin's youngest son, 7 years old, and held him there. 10 people were in that restaurant. Adults, elderly staff. Every single one of them froze, because the only thing any of them could see was that little boy. Huang used that. One by one, he forced them to bind each other's hands and feet with rope. Only Qin Huyi, Jinglin's wife, was still unbound. She watched her son crying, bleeding at the throat, and something broke in her. She threw herself at Huang, fighting with everything she had. He stabbed her in the neck with the broken bottle. She died on the floor. The sight of blood did something to him. Whatever hesitation remained disappeared. He made a decision, no witnesses. Everyone in that room had to die. They were all bound. None of them could fight back. Huang moved through the room methodically, and one by one, he cut each person's throat. 9 people dead inside the 8 Immortals restaurant. Then, he remembered something. Before he died, the youngest boy had cried out that ninth aunt Qin Lijin would find out and go to the police. Huang couldn't leave that loose end. That same night, he sent a young accomplice, the same man witnesses had described around 30 years old, to Qin Lijin's stall with a story about a sick child who needed her. She came. The moment she walked through the door, Huang killed her. 10 victims, no survivors. Huang confessed that it took him 8 full hours in the restaurant's own kitchen to dismember all 10 bodies. He packed the remains into black plastic bags and disposed of them across multiple dumping sites and shorelines throughout Macau. In December 1986, before the trial could begin, Huang took his own life in his cell. He had spent weeks quietly sharpening the lid of a soda can, hiding it on his person, waiting. When the night came, he used it to cut through his own veins. He died before morning, taking whatever final secrets remained with him to the grave. The case was officially closed, but it left behind questions that have never been fully answered. The first, who was the young accomplice? The man around 30 years old who lured Chen Lizhen to her death. Was he present during the killings? Did he help dispose of the bodies? Police files from the time contain no answers. His identity was never established. The second question is the one nobody wanted to ask, but everybody did. Police recovered the limbs of the victims, hands, feet. But the torsos and internal organs of all 10 people were never found. Not anywhere. Combined with the fact that the 8 Immortals restaurant reopened remarkably quickly after the murders, a horrifying theory spread through the streets of Macau and Hong Kong that the missing remains had been ground into filling and sold to customers as steamed buns. It was never officially confirmed by police. It has never been officially ruled out. And it became the darkest urban legend in the history of both cities. When everything is stripped away, the Zhang family's story begins and ends with gambling. If Qin Huiyi had never fallen into debt, if those mahjong games had never spiraled into something she couldn't climb out of, 10 people would have gone to sleep on the night of August 4th, 1985, and woken up the next morning. They didn't get that chance. And that's a wrap on today's video. If this is your first time visiting the channel, welcome. Don't forget to hit the red subscribe button below and tap the notification bell so you never miss the next case. Until then, take care, and I'll see you next time.